The wine glass trembled slightly when the mother said, "She's just the babysitter. Don't give her ideas." Still, I refilled her Cabernet with the same hands that packed her daughter's overnight bag. As the pine cleaner clung to the marble counter, I replayed 6 years of birthdays, pickups, and whispered errands. The same woman who trusted me with her child never once checked the name on the deed. That's when I knew I wasn't part of their family, but I owned their home. So I smiled, locked the door behind me, and made the lease my lullaby. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The Granger house shimmered that night like something out of a lifestyle magazine. All gold light, clinking glass, and the faint sweetness of pine candles bought in bulk. Outside, the neighborhood glowed with synchronized lawn reindeer and twinkle lights shaped like halos. Inside, the laughter was the kind that got louder when people wanted to prove they were happy. Delaney Fox moved quietly through it all, the one shadow in a room built for shine. She adjusted Avery's red velvet bow before setting down the child's plate. Baked ham, a tiny scoop of mashed potatoes, 3 green beans lined in a row. Avery smiled up, gap-toothed and glowing. "You made it pretty," she whispered. Delaney smiled back. "We eat with our eyes first, remember?" From the dining room came the murmur of adults talking money disguised as future plans. The chandelier hummed faintly over 12 guests and a table that could have seated 20. Samantha Granger sat at the head, posture perfect, voice pitched to carry. Miles occupied his usual corner, the kind of man who managed to look bored even when people were trying to impress him. When Delaney brought out another basket of rolls, Sam's laughter cut the air like a champagne cork popping. "Delaney, sweetheart, you can just leave those on the sideboard. You don't need to hover." The room paused for a beat, just long enough for Delaney to notice. Then Miles added, not cruelly but carelessly, "She's getting paid, right?" The words slid across the table, soft enough to be plausible, sharp enough to land. Delaney didn't look up. She placed the basket down, smoothed the linen edge of the tablecloth, and smiled the way professionals do when they've practiced swallowing smaller humiliations. "Of course," she said lightly, but no one heard. They were already laughing about something else. A vacation, or the new kitchen backsplash. Avery's small hand tugged her sleeve. "Can I come help you in the kitchen?" Delaney knelt beside her. "Stay and enjoy dessert. I'll pack your bag for Grandma's, okay?" "Okay," Avery whispered. But her eyes followed Delaney like a lifeline. In the kitchen, the air was cooler, quieter, the soundproof confession booth of hired help. The counter gleamed with untouched food, sugared pecans, cranberry compote, little pastries shaped like wreaths. Delaney took her time wrapping leftovers, her movements precise, deliberate. She could still hear Sam's voice carrying over the hum of the dishwasher. "She's just the babysitter." Delaney had heard worse, not from Sam, but from women like her. Women who believed civility was kindness, who confused politeness with decency. Tonight, it wasn't the words that stung. It was how normal they sounded. The kitchen clock clicked toward 9:03. Snow hadn't started yet, but the cold pressed against the window panes like a warning. Delaney gathered Avery's things, pajamas, toothbrush, a half-colored Christmas card addressed to Santa, "Love Avery G." She folded the pajamas with care, smoothing each sleeve before tucking them neatly into the pink overnight bag. Then she added an extra sweater. Avery always got cold on long drives. The laughter from the other room rose again. Someone was telling a story about ski season. Someone else complained about the help at their mountain house. Delaney closed the zipper on the bag slowly, letting the sound of it punctuate the night like a quiet decision. "Delaney?" Sam's voice floated from the dining room. "Before you go, could you refill the wine? The red, not the blend. You know the difference." "Of course," Delaney said. She poured the Cabernet into crystal glasses that had never seen a fingerprint, then set the bottle down and turned to leave. Sam didn't look at her again. Miles was already checking his phone. When Delaney stepped into the hallway, the light dimmed. She caught her reflection in the front door's glass. Apron smudged, hair neat, eyes steady. It struck her that she'd been part of this family's Christmases for 6 years, yet had no photos in their frames, no seat at their table. She reached for her coat, slipping it on quietly, and looked toward the staircase where Avery's soft voice drifted down from upstairs, singing some half-remembered carol about angels and snow. Delaney smiled, faint but certain. "Time to disappear," she murmured to herself. She picked up Avery's bag, slid her paycheck envelope into her coat pocket, and stepped out into the winter night. Behind her, laughter spilled from the house like music she'd finally stopped dancing to. The door clicked shut. Not in anger, not even in goodbye. Just the kind of quiet sound that marks the end of one life and the start of another. The morning after Christmas smelled like burnt coffee and thawed resentment. Greenville was slow to wake, rooftops glazed with frost, the streets too quiet for a holiday week. Delaney Fox sat in her Aunt Ruthie's real estate office, a converted mill building with tall windows and heat that never quite worked, watching a slow wisp of steam rise from her mug. Ruthie Jean Fox, hair pulled tight and reading glasses perched low, was flipping through the property database like a woman searching for proof that the world had gone a little crooked. "You sure you want to know?" she asked finally, not looking up. Delaney nodded once. "I just need to confirm something." Ruthie's keyboard clicked with brisk precision. "Granger, right? Miles and Samantha. Big house on Brook Hollow Lane. The one with the magnolia wreath and 3-car drive?" Delaney gave a faint smile. "That's the one. You'd think it came with its own press release." A few more keystrokes, then Ruthie stopped. Her brows lifted not in surprise, but in that subtle of course way that came with age and experience. She turned the screen toward Delaney. "Well, look at that. They don't own it." Delaney blinked. "What?" "The property's part of a family trust. Miles Granger Sr. holds the title. Junior and his wife are tenants. Technically, their lease is just a formality, but still, legally, they're renters. Guess they didn't brag about that part, huh?" Delaney stared at the screen, tracing the blocky type that spelled out what she hadn't dared to imagine. Owner of record. Miles Granger Sr. Trustee, Granger Family Trust. 6 years she'd stood in that house, decorated their trees, folded their linens, scrubbed their marble countertops. And she'd never once thought to question whose name was on the deed. She leaned back, arms crossed. "They told everyone they were remodeling once they closed the inheritance. I overheard it last year, Sam saying, 'Once Dad hands it over, we'll finally do the kitchen right.'" Ruthie sat back too, letting out a small whistle. "So they've been play acting, polishing silver they don't own. Happens more than you'd think in this town." She reached for a pen, twirling it between her fingers. "You really want to dig?" Delaney nodded. Her voice was steady, though something inside her was shifting. An old kind of silence breaking loose. "I want a title report. Certified. If anyone asks, you're pulling it for your records." "Always am," Ruthie said, already typing. Outside, the clouds hung low, heavy with the promise of snow that never quite came. Delaney watched a car pass, a red SUV not unlike the Grangers, and felt a twist of something that wasn't bitterness. Not exactly. More like recognition. The night before, she'd been just the babysitter. This morning, she was the only one in the story who knew the truth. Ruthie printed the report and slid it across the desk. "You want the full file? Taxes, appraisal, lien history?" "Everything," Delaney said softly. She folded the papers into her leather folio, the one she used for Avery's school forms and medical receipts. Her fingers hesitated at the zipper, then she pulled it closed with quiet finality. Ruthie studied her. "You're thinking about something." "I'm thinking," Delaney said, "about how people build lives on names that aren't even theirs." Her aunt nodded slowly. "And what are you planning to build?" Delaney gave a small, careful smile. "Something with my own name on it." For a long moment neither spoke. The only sound was the creak of the old radiator and the shuffle of Ruthie's pen against the desk. Then Ruthie leaned forward, voice low. "Be smart about this, Laney. Folks like the Grangers, they don't notice you until you're a problem." Delaney slipped the folder into her bag. "Then I guess it's time to become one." As she left the office, the cold bit sharper. The sidewalks glittered with salt. In the distance, church bells were ringing, faint, metallic, and out of sync. She paused at a crosswalk, adjusting her gloves, and caught sight of her reflection in a shop window. Not the babysitter. Not tonight. She walked on, her bag pressed close to her side. By the time she reached her car, she already had a new file on her phone labeled in neat, private letters, "Just the babysitter. Notes." Inside the folder, she added the first entry. "Granger property. Not owned by occupants. Filed under trust. Lease due for renewal in 60 days. She stared at the words for a beat too long, then locked the screen. The sky above Greenville was bruising into dusk, the air ripe with wood smoke and unfinished stories. Delaney turned the ignition, and for the first time in 6 years, she didn't feel small driving away from Brook Hollow Lane. She felt ahead. The heater wheezed to life, a low hum against the quiet. Delaney's reflection in the rear view looked calm, almost curious. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, a half smile tugging at her mouth. They'd told her to stay quiet. She would. Just not in the way they expected. The envelope was pale gold, hand-addressed, and tucked beneath a stack of gift cards on the Granger's kitchen counter. The kind of gesture meant to look thoughtful, but not too personal. Delaney spotted it the moment she came by on the 27th to pick up Avery's forgotten mittens. It had her name written in Samantha Granger's looping, practiced handwriting. Delaney, Merry Christmas. The exclamation point felt like performance. Inside was a folded card embossed with holly leaves and a crisp check for $2,000. No note, no signature from Avery, just a number that said, "We can pay you to disappear again next year." Delaney ran her finger along the edge of the check, her reflection glinting off the stainless steel fridge. She didn't linger. Gratitude was expected. Reverence was optional. She slipped the check into her coat pocket, zipped up Avery's mittens, and left the house with the same quiet composure she always carried. Though this time, it felt heavier, more deliberate. At the bank, the lobby smelled faintly of pine cleaner and printer ink. She filled out the deposit slip with a calm that bordered on ritual, writing each digit carefully, as though they might rearrange themselves into something else if she looked away. When the teller asked, "Would you like to deposit or cash this?" Delaney smiled, even. Deposit. Checking. The woman behind the counter glanced at the memo line, holiday bonus, then nodded and stamped the receipt. Delaney stepped aside, opened her banking app, and began moving her savings into a new account she'd created last night, DF Holdings. The name was simple, unremarkable. That was the point. Her phone vibrated with the transfer confirmation. A small blue checkmark appeared next to the total. 4 years of careful saving from nights, weekends, and skipped vacations. Her chest tightened, not with nerves, but with the strange thrill of control. Later that afternoon, she met Ruthie at a small diner off Augusta Road, the kind with laminated menus and Christmas garlands still drooping in the windows. Ruthie ordered sweet tea and a BLT, Delaney, just coffee. "So," Ruthie began, stirring sugar into her glass, You want to talk about your bonus or about what you plan to do with it? Delaney tilted her head. Depends which one makes me sound crazier. Ruthie chuckled. Both, probably. She pulled a folded brochure from her purse and slid it across the table. Got something that might interest you. Bank-owned foreclosure. 2 streets over from the Grangers. 3-bed, 2-bath, wraparound porch. Structurally sound. Needs love, not miracles. Delaney opened the paper. The photo showed a modest white house with chipped shutters and a porch swing tilted to one side. Why so cheap? Owner passed last year. Kids out of state. Bank's tired of holding it. Ruthie leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Low-ball offer eligible. You've been saving long enough, Laney. Time to stop working for other people's homes. Delaney's thumb traced the porch rail in the photo. Same block, she murmured. Same block, Ruthie confirmed. Outside, the winter sun caught on the diner's glass door, throwing a shard of light across the table. Delaney stared at it, a small smile tugging at her mouth. Let's take a look. The house smelled faintly of dust and possibility. Light poured through tall windows, dust motes catching in the air like static. The floor creaked beneath her boots, not in warning, but in greeting. She walked through each room with quiet precision. 3 small bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with tired tile, a kitchen that faced the street. The porch wrapped around in a gentle curve, perfect for coffee or still mornings with nothing to prove. Ruthie watched her, arms crossed. Well? Delaney turned in a slow circle. It's smaller than the Grangers. Everything's smaller than the Grangers. Delaney laughed softly. Then it's just right. She could see it already. Light curtains fluttering in spring air, Avery coloring at the kitchen table, quiet mornings without someone calling her name from another room. The idea lodged deep, simple, and dangerous. Ownership. That night, she dropped Avery off after piano lessons. The little girl clutched a paper snowflake, its edges jagged from uneven cuts. Miss Delaney, she asked shyly, can you live closer to me someday? Delaney crouched down to her level, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. Closer? Avery nodded earnestly. Like, down the street. So I can come visit? Delaney smiled, but there was something fierce behind it now. The kind of warmth that comes from knowing exactly what you'll make real. I'm working on it, sweetheart. Avery beamed, running up the walkway to her house. Sam opened the door halfway, her silhouette framed in gold light and shadow. She waved once, politely, then turned away before Delaney could respond. Delaney lingered by the curb, her headlights catching the edge of that perfect lawn. Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her bank receipt, and smoothed it flat against the steering wheel. $2,000. 1 porch. A plan. She folded the slip neatly, placed it back into her purse, and exhaled. Working on it, she whispered and started the car. The wind picked up, carrying faint laughter from down the block. The Granger's house, alive with guests again. But for the first time, it sounded distant, like something happening in another life. And in a way, it was. The first week of January always carried a hush, Greenville between seasons, half asleep and gray. Frost clung to the lawns on Brook Hollow Lane, and the Granger's wreath had gone brittle, shedding red berries onto their front steps. Delaney's car idled in the driveway, engine low and even, as she waited for Avery to tie her shoes. The girl's small voice drifted through the cracked window. Mom said you can use the garage door today. Daddy forgot to reset the code. Delaney smiled faintly. She already knew the code. She'd known all of them. Over the years, the Grangers had handed her every tool of access: spare keys, alarm pin, garage opener, the gate pass for the neighborhood association. It had all been routine, casual trust handed down in moments of chaos. "You've got the house handled, right?" Sam would say, already halfway out the door, lipstick perfect and phone ringing. And she had handled it. Birthdays, school pickups, forgotten permission slips, dog vaccinations, pharmacy runs. Delaney kept their world running so seamlessly that they never noticed she was the engine. That night, back in her small apartment, she spread the evidence across her kitchen table: a drawer key, a spare fob, a grocery rewards card registered under Sam's phone number. Her hands were steady as she opened her laptop and began a new spreadsheet labeled Operational Records, Brook Hollow Lane. Column by column, she logged every errand, every extra hour, every mile. Dry cleaning pickups, 142. Prescription refills, 83. School events attended without parental presence, 27. Estimated value of uncompensated time, 18,400. It wasn't revenge yet. Not really, it was documentation. By midnight, the spreadsheet had grown into a quiet indictment. 6 years of invisible labor laid out in digital rows, undeniable in their precision. She saved a copy to an encrypted drive, then attached it to a private note. Role exceeds childcare. Consider custodial classification. When she sent it to Ruthie for review, her aunt called within 10 minutes. "Lainey," she said, her voice low and half amused, "you've basically been running their estate for free." Delaney leaned back in her chair. "So I've noticed." "You could make a legal argument here, especially if you've been managing property tasks. It's not nanny work when you're coordinating their life." Would it hold? In family court? Maybe not. But on paper? It shows leverage. And leverage, my girl, is its own kind of equity. Delaney smiled. Small, calm, dangerous. "I'll keep building." 2 days later, she found herself back at the Grangers' kitchen counter, a mug of coffee cooling by the sink as Avery worked on a crayon drawing. The house was unnaturally quiet. Miles was traveling, and Sam had left early for a brunch she'd called business socializing. "Look," Avery said, holding up her picture. 3 figures stood beneath a crooked roof, stick legs and bright smiles: Mom, Dad, and Delaney. Delaney froze. "That's me?" Avery nodded, proud. "You're holding the house keys, because you always have them." Something flickered in Delaney's chest, equal parts affection and irony. "You're a good observer, kiddo." Avery grinned and went back to coloring, humming off key. Delaney slipped her phone from her pocket and took a quiet photo of the drawing before folding it carefully and sliding it into her planner. Evidence. Of a softer kind. She spent the afternoon checking small things, replacing light bulbs, adjusting the thermostat, logging every purchase Sam had charged to her reimbursement card. Every click, every line item went into her growing archive. When she finally stepped out into the dusk, the porch lights blinked on behind her. The Granger house glowed warm and hollow, like a lantern too proud to admit it was empty. She paused at the edge of the walkway, watching her breath fog in the air. Somewhere behind her, Avery's laughter echoed faintly through the glass, a sound that still tugged at her, even as resolve took root. Delaney unlocked her car and glanced down at her phone screen, where Ruthie's text waited. "Ruthie. Title's clear on that foreclosure. I can draft your offer paperwork whenever you're ready." Delaney's thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed a single reply. "Delaney. Not yet. I'm still counting." Then she looked up, back toward the Grangers' front windows, where her own reflection blinked against the glass. Steady, deliberate, holding a house key that didn't technically belong to her. For now. The porch light flickered once, like a wink. Delaney slipped the key into her coat pocket, smiled faintly, and walked away, the sound of her boots sharp against the driveway, as if marking territory with each step. The rain came soft and steady over Greenville that Monday morning, one of those winter rains that felt more like intention than weather. The clouds hung low over the magnolia trees lining Brook Hollow Lane, their glossy leaves dripping in silver light. Inside Ruthie Fox Realty, the office smelled faintly of paper and ink. A space heater buzzed near the filing cabinet, barely keeping up with the draft. Delaney sat across from her aunt, her coat still damp at the shoulders, a manila folder open between them. "You ready?" Ruthie asked, slipping her glasses down her nose. "Once this goes through, there's no unringing that bell." Delaney nodded, eyes on the paperwork. "It's just an offer." Ruthie chuckled quietly. "That's what they all say." The form was plain, line after line of legal language, white space, and the faint scent of toner. In the top corner, printed neatly, sat the name of a brand new LLC, Brookside Holdings Group, Delaney's creation, her shield. She signed at the bottom, her handwriting steady, every loop deliberate. "No one connects this to me?" "Not unless they go digging," Ruthie said. "And they won't. Miles Sr. will assume it's some investment firm trying to snag undervalued property in the subdivision. He'll be thrilled someone wants it off his hands before tax season." Delaney exhaled through her nose, calm and measured. "And the Grangers? They'll never even see the bid." Ruthie tapped her pen. "The trust handles offers through the lawyer, not the tenants. You're invisible, Laney, just how they trained you to be." Delaney met her aunt's eyes and smiled. That quiet, precise smile that meant something had already shifted. "Then let's make invisibility work for me." By Wednesday, the offer had gone through escrow. No competing bids, no curious calls, just an acceptance letter stamped with the Granger Family Trust's insignia. Delaney sat alone in her apartment, the acceptance email glowing on her laptop. Offer accepted. Earnest deposit received. Closing February 3rd. She clicked through the documents again, though she'd already memorized every line. The purchase price was modest, shockingly so, because the Granger patriarch had assumed no one outside the family would want an outdated colonial with drainage issues. He didn't know the woman who had vacuumed its carpets, fixed its thermostats, and paid attention to every creak in the floorboards. He didn't know he'd just sold it to her. Delaney transferred the earnest money that night, her holiday bonus and the bulk of her savings, watching the balance drop to nearly nothing. She didn't flinch. She'd built that number by the hour, the errand, the year. It wasn't loss. It was conversion. Ruthie called around 9. "Congratulations, Miss Fox," she said, her voice light but edged with awe. "You're under contract." Delaney leaned against the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. 30 days, she said. 30 days, Ruthie echoed. "Then you'll hold the deed." There was silence on the line, a rare kind. Then Ruthie added softly, "You know what that means, right?" Delaney smiled. "That I'm about to be their new landlord." The following week unfolded with quiet precision. Delaney didn't change her routine. School drop-offs, grocery runs, light errands. She was still the steady presence in Avery's days, the background hum of reliability that made the Granger's world function. If Sam noticed anything different about her tone, she didn't say. If Miles sensed the faint shift in authority, he ignored it. Delaney still wore the same cardigans, still signed her texts with polite ellipses. But inside her planner, a tab marked property transition grew thick with notes, utility accounts, maintenance records, insurance quotes. At night, she'd sit at her small kitchen table with her laptop open, rerouting phone bills and power services in preparation. Every new login felt like a key turning in a door. When Ruthie dropped off the official escrow packet, she placed it carefully beside the candle Delaney had burning, vanilla and cedarwood. "You've thought this through," she said. Delaney didn't look up. "I've lived in that house longer than anyone except the termites." Ruthie barked a laugh. Well, now you'll own the termites too. Delaney's lips curved. Good. They pay attention. On January 29th, 5 days before closing, she drove by the Granger's house at dusk. Through the window, she could see Sam rearranging the living room furniture, the same furniture that technically belonged to her father-in-law. Avery was sitting cross-legged on the rug, building a small tower from plastic blocks. Delaney parked half a block away and watched for a long moment. It wasn't malice that pulsed through her. It was something calmer, older. A sense of equilibrium finally approaching. The porch light flicked on, illuminating the wreath still hanging, half brown. The wind caught its bough, twisting it sideways. Delaney opened her glove compartment, took out the property folder, and slipped her fingers along the edges of the pending deed. Her name wasn't on it yet. But soon. In the passenger seat, her phone buzzed. A message from Ruthie. Ruthie. Utilities ready to transfer once the ink dries. Power, water, gas. You'll need to set up owner verification Monday. Delaney typed back one line. Delaney. Schedule it. She set the phone down, started the car, and looked once more at the glowing house. That perfect portrait of order and hierarchy. They'd never think to look down the block for the woman who held their future in her filing cabinet. She smiled once, slow, precise, and drove away into the rain. That night, her last note before sleep read simply, "Invisible ownership begins." But even as she closed her eyes, one thought lingered, steady as heartbeat. They thought they'd hired help. They'd just sold her the house. By the second week of February, Greenville thawed. The snow that had briefly flirted with the lawns of Brook Hollow Lane melted into slick ribbons along the curbs, and the Granger's house, her house, though no one knew it yet, stood with its shutters slightly crooked from winter wind. Delaney parked down the street, watching movers unload new patio furniture that Sam had probably charged to an account she didn't technically control. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, everything had. That morning, Ruthie had called with a tone halfway between pride and disbelief. "It's official, Laney. Deed recorded. Utilities transferred. You're the owner of 614 Brook Hollow Lane." Delaney had only said, "Copy that," before ending the call. But she'd sat in silence for a full minute, her palms pressed flat against the cool kitchen counter, breathing in the weight of it. Now, as she scrolled through her emails, a new message appeared. From Samantha Granger. Subject, Lease Renewal Inquiry. She opened it. "Hey Delaney, I'm forwarding the old lease from Dad's lawyer. Miles says you might need a copy for tax records or something. We'll probably just renew it automatically this spring. Same terms. Let me know if you need signatures." S. Delaney's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Oh, Samantha," she whispered. She opened the attachment, scanned the familiar lines. Property of Granger Family Trust. Term, 12 months beginning April 1st. Tenant obligations include landscaping and upkeep. The last page, dense with legalese, contained one small sentence Sam had clearly never read. No automatic renewal clause. Lessor reserves. Right to reissue under new ownership terms. Delaney leaned back, eyes glinting with quiet amusement. "Guess what, Avery?" she murmured under her breath, imagining the child's curious voice. "Your mom just sent me her own eviction notice." She forwarded the lease to Ruthie with a short note. "DF. Check clause 15. Ownership transfer applies. RF. Seconds later. Oh my lord, they'll need to negotiate with you now." Delaney stared at those words for a moment, letting their gravity sink in. Negotiate with her. That afternoon, she sat at her dining table with a mug of cold coffee and a stack of documents spread around her laptop. The house was quiet except for the sound of paper sliding against paper. A standard eviction packet lay open, its blank spaces waiting like polite invitations. Ruthie's voice echoed in her head from their last call. You don't have to use it, but it's smart to have it ready. Delaney filled in the basics: names, dates, property address. Her pen steady, clinical. It wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an insurance policy. Halfway through, her phone buzzed, Miles Granger flashing on screen. She let it ring twice before answering. Delaney Fox. Hey, his voice came, thin and distracted, as though he were reading off a script. Sam forwarded you something about our lease? Yes. Right. Just, we'll re-sign it. It's just a formality. Dad's trust paperwork. You know how it is. Delaney's tone was smooth as glass. I understand forms very well, Mr. Granger. Good. Just the same dates, same rate, nothing changes. I'll have Sam send over the signed copy when she gets to it. Of course, Delaney said, and hung up. She sat still for a long moment, staring at the quiet hum of her refrigerator. The conversation had been so casual, so unguarded, it almost felt like permission. 2 days later, she was back at the Grangers for Avery's piano lesson. The air inside smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh flowers, Sam's attempt at polish before company. Avery ran down the stairs, pigtails bouncing, clutching her music book. Miss Delaney, she chirped. Guess what? Mommy said you're moving away. Delaney froze mid-step. Did she? Avery nodded solemnly. She said you'll probably go work for another family soon, since we're grown now. Is that what she said? Uh-huh. But I told her she's wrong. You're our family. The girl's voice wavered, eyes suddenly bright. You'll still come to my birthday, right? Delaney crouched, smoothing the corner of Avery's bow. Sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere I don't choose to go. Avery's lower lip trembled. Promise? Delaney's throat tightened, not from guilt, but from the strange, piercing ache of loyalty misplaced. Promise, she whispered. Behind them, Sam's voice floated from the kitchen, sharp as glass. Avery, don't pester Miss Delaney. She's got other clients to think about. Delaney rose slowly. You're right, Samantha, she called back, her tone calm and even. I do. Sam appeared in the doorway, wineglass in hand. Oh, the lease thing? Miles said he'd handle it. Just sign and send it back when you can, all right? Dad wants everything tidy before tax season. Delaney smiled, her expression unreadable. I'll make sure it's tidy. That night, she sat at her desk, both leases open side by side. Old tenant copy on the left, new owner's contract on the right. Line by line, they matched. Until they didn't. She reached the final clause, highlighting it in yellow. Owner reserves full discretion regarding renewal or termination of tenancy. 60 days. That was all Sam and Miles had left before the paper shield around their world expired. Delaney shut off the lamp, the room plunging into soft amber from the streetlights outside. On her planner, she wrote a single reminder in the margin for April 1st. Lease ends. Decision day. Then she leaned back, letting the quiet hum of satisfaction settle deep in her chest. For 6 years, she'd waited for permission to speak. Now she held it in writing. By March, the air in Greenville carried that early spring tension, magnolias threatening to bloom while the nights still bit cold. Brook Hollow Lane glittered with wet sidewalks and the faint sound of wind chimes. Delaney Fox pulled her car into the Granger's driveway for what felt like the 1000th time, but something about the act felt altered. The gate still recognized her code. The garage still hummed obediently open. But today, she didn't use either. She parked on the curb, grabbed her clipboard, and walked up the front steps. For the first time in 6 years, she knocked. It was a deliberate sound. Firm, measured, undeniable. Samantha Granger opened the door halfway, confusion flashing before the usual polite mask slid back into place. Delaney, you can come in. You don't have to. I prefer to be invited, Delaney said smoothly, her expression pleasant but final. Sam blinked. Oh, well, sure. Come in then. Delaney stepped across the threshold and handed over a manila envelope. Invoices for February, she said. Extra hours from snow days, school events, and late pickups. All itemized and signed. Sam took it automatically, her smile tightening. Invoices? I'm standardizing my record keeping. My accountant suggested it. Right. Sam's tone turned brittle, uncertain where to land. Well, that's very professional of you. Delaney gave a small nod. It's time I treat this like a business. A silence followed, the kind that drew clear lines in air. From the living room, Avery called out, Miss Delaney, come see my school project. Delaney smiled at the child's voice, gentle, warm, then turned back to Sam. I'll be in the den. Sam hesitated, something wary flickering in her eyes. Sure, make yourself comfortable. But the phrase didn't land the same anymore. That night, in Ruthie's office, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as documents printed one after another. Ruthie adjusted her glasses, scanning the form before stamping it with a satisfying thunk. There, she said. LLC lease to own record filed. Brookside Holdings, U, officially has the right to sublet or transfer tenancy as needed. Delaney accepted the copy, her fingers brushing the embossed seal. That means if the Grangers want to renew, they'll be doing it through you, Ruthie finished, grinning. They think they're tenants of a family trust. They're about to learn they're renting from you. Delaney's lips curved. Paperwork builds better walls than bricks. Ruthie raised a brow. Laney, you've got a quiet, mean streak. Delaney shrugged, slipping the document into her folio, only when provoked. The next day, Delaney went to the post office and filled out a simple form that felt like crossing an invisible border. Change of address. Old, 212 Willow Creek Apartments. New, 602 Brook Hollow Lane. Not the Granger's number. Hers. The smaller white house with the peeling shutters and porch swing she'd started to sand and repaint herself. When the clerk asked, "Effective immediately?" Delaney nodded. Effective immediately. She drove there afterward, parking in front of her new home. The porch still smelled faintly of paint thinner and rain. Her mug sat on the railing, left from the morning before, half full of cold coffee. She took it in hand and stood for a moment, looking down the street toward the Granger's house, the big one, still pristine and unaware. For once, she didn't feel the weight of belonging there. She felt the power of being next. 2 days later, the school bus hissed to a stop at the corner. Avery's small face pressed against the window, eyes wide as she spotted Delaney standing on her porch, holding a stack of mail. The bus door creaked open, and Avery tumbled down the steps, backpack bouncing. "Miss Delaney!" she yelled, breathless. "That's your house?" Delaney laughed softly, bending down to meet her. "Sure is." "You live here now? Like, here? "Yes, ma'am." Avery's smile bloomed so bright it seemed to light the street. "That's right next to me. Practically neighbors," Delaney said. "Can I visit?" "We'll see what your mom says." Avery's excitement faltered. "Mom doesn't like surprises." Delaney brushed a hand across the child's hair. "Then we'll let her find out slowly." The bus driver honked once, and Avery waved goodbye, sprinting toward the Granger driveway. Delaney stood watching as the girl disappeared through the familiar front door. The same door she'd once entered through the back, unseen. Now she watched from a distance, the space between them deliberate, earned. That evening, Ruthie called while Delaney was tightening a loose porch board. "I saw the address change come through," her aunt said. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Delaney smiled into the fading light. "It feels like drawing a line that can't be erased." She set the drill down, flexing her fingers. Let them keep thinking nothing's changed. The truth's built into the paperwork now. Ruthie chuckled. Walls built from paper. I'll be damned. Delaney looked toward the Granger house where the windows glowed like stage lights behind drawn curtains. They wanted me invisible, she said softly. Now I'm right where they can't help but see me. The sky over Greenville turned violet, crickets beginning their slow chorus. Delaney stepped back from the porch, hands on her hips, surveying what she'd built. Quietly, steadily, piece by piece. Her home, her fortress, her next move. And for the first time, she wasn't standing behind anyone's door. The morning she delivered the notice, Greenville was washed in spring sunlight. Deceptively soft, the kind that warmed your skin but didn't melt the frost still clinging to the grass. Delaney Fox parked in the Granger's driveway for the first time in weeks, her reflection sharp in the polished glass of their front door. She was dressed not as help, but as a professional. Slate gray blazer, neat ponytail, leather folio tucked under her arm. The papers inside were crisp, notarized, and final. When Sam opened the door, she looked momentarily disoriented, as if seeing Delaney in daylight made no sense. "Laney? What are you? We don't have you scheduled today, do we?" Delaney smiled, polite as a bank officer. "No, Mrs. Granger. This is business." That word, business, made Sam's expression tighten. Business? I thought it best to hand-deliver some documents. From behind her, Miles appeared, phone in hand, still in his running gear. "What documents?" Delaney stepped forward and offered the envelope. "Formal notice of ownership transfer and lease expiration. As of last month, this property is no longer under the Granger Family Trust. The deed is held by Brookside Holdings Group." Sam frowned, already scanning the letterhead. "Brookside Holdings?" Then she stopped. Her eyes flicked up, widening. "That's you, isn't it?" Delaney didn't answer. She didn't need to. Miles blinked, the words catching up slowly. "Wait. You're saying you bought the house?" "Yes," Delaney said calmly, "and the lease ends in 60 days. You're welcome to reapply as tenants." For a moment, the only sound was the wind brushing the magnolia branches. Then Sam laughed, sharp and incredulous. "You bought this? With what? Babysitting money?" Her voice rose like a match catching flame. "You think you can just, what, stroll into our lives and own us?" Delaney's tone stayed steady. "No, I simply purchased real estate. You're the ones living in it." Miles glanced at his wife, then back at Delaney, silent, but pale. He wasn't built for confrontation. His jaw tightened instead, fingers tapping against the phone screen. "Who put you up to this?" Sam demanded. "Was it Ruthie? Because this feels illegal. It has to be." "Everything's legal," Delaney said. "Ruthie filed all documents through county channels. You'll find her signature on the notarized pages." As if summoned, a second car door shut outside. Ruthie strode up the path, file folder in hand, heels clicking like punctuation. "Morning," she said easily, greeting Miles with the faint smile of someone used to negotiating from power. "I brought the hard copies, just to be courteous." Sam's voice trembled. "You can't be serious." "Oh, it's very serious," Ruthie replied. "Deed transfer's been public record for 2 weeks. I'd recommend you start reading fine print. It's a useful skill." Delaney stood silent beside her aunt, the spring light catching the faint sheen of calm on her face. The Granger's marble foyer, once a place she'd scrubbed and tiptoed through, now felt like neutral ground. Sam finally turned toward Miles, her voice cracking. "Say something." But Miles only muttered, "We'll call Derek. He'll know how to fix this." "Mr. Holt's a good choice," Ruthie said smoothly. "He'll tell you what I already have. You can stay month to month while new terms are drafted. Otherwise, The lease expires in 60 days. Sam's mouth opened, then closed again. The fury had nowhere left to go. She looked at Delaney like she was seeing her for the first time, not as the hired help, not as background, but as an opponent who'd learned every rule before deciding to play. A small voice broke the silence. "Miss Delaney?" Avery stood halfway down the staircase, still in her pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear. Her eyes were wide, uncertain. "Are we moving?" Delaney's heart tugged. She softened her tone, stepping closer. "Not if they learn some manners, sweetheart." Sam gasped, half offense, half disbelief. "You don't talk to—" But Ruthie cut in smoothly. "Laney, let me handle the rest." She turned to the adults. "You'll find everything notarized and compliant. We've even provided your copy of the updated lease proposal." Miles took the envelope from her hand like it might bite. "Month to month," he read aloud. "Exactly," Ruthie said. "That gives you flexibility, or, if you'd rather move elsewhere, we can make arrangements. But either way, the property belongs to Ms. Fox now." Delaney met his eyes, steady and unreadable. "I'm sure you'll want time to think it over." Sam's breath came quick and shallow. You're cruel." Delaney tilted her head, almost curious. "No, just organized." When she and Ruthie stepped back onto the porch, the wind had picked up again, scattering the early petals from the magnolia tree. Delaney's hands didn't shake. Her heartbeat was slow, deliberate. Ruthie exhaled. "Well, that's one way to change the locks without touching a door." Delaney looked back at the house, her house, where the curtains were already drawn. "They'll call Derek Holt before sundown." "Good," Ruthie said. "He's the only one who'll explain it gently." Delaney gave a faint smile. "Gentleness isn't my department." They walked to the car in silence. Halfway down the street, Ruthie asked, "What's next?" Delaney's gaze flicked to the rearview mirror, where the Granger house receded behind them. "Now," she said quietly, "we see how they behave when the babysitter owns the house." The reflection of her own face stared back at her, calm, resolute, utterly in control. And somewhere deep inside, the first spark of victory finally, quietly, caught flame. It began, as most suburban scandals do, with a Facebook post. Samantha Granger's profile photo was a filtered headshot from a charity gala, her smile soft and curated. Beneath it, the words stretched across a glowing screen like an invitation for sympathy. "Imagine dedicating years to your home and family, only to have someone you trusted take advantage. Some people forget their place when you're kind to them." Disgusting. No names, no direct tags, just enough venom to stick. Delaney saw it before breakfast, a message forwarded by Ruthie with the subject line, "You've gone viral, sweetheart." She sat at her kitchen table, the morning light slicing across her coffee cup, and read it 3 times. The comments multiplied by the minute. "People are ungrateful these days." "Ugh, help always oversteps." "She sounds unhinged." Delaney's pulse stayed steady. She reached for her printer. The machine whirred to life, the sound almost soothing. A single sheet slid out, the ink still wet, the words preserved like evidence. She slipped it into a plastic sleeve and labeled the folder with a ballpoint pen, "Tenant Harassment, March File." Then she placed it neatly beside her other documents. Leases, payment logs, notarized statements. Each folder a brick in the quiet fortress she was building, one that no rumor could dent. By noon, Ruthie was at her office desk, glasses perched low and temper barely contained. "She just handed us defamation on a silver platter," she said, scrolling through the post. "Never thought I'd see a woman that good at ruining her own lease renewal." Delaney sat across from her, calm, composed. "What do we do?" Ruthie's smile sharpened. "We do what civilized women do. We send a cease and desist, polite as Sunday pie, mean as truth." She began drafting, her nails clicking the keyboard. To Samantha Granger, tenant of record at 614 Brook Hollow Lane, it has come to the attention of ownership that defamatory statements have been made in a public forum. The tone was measured, surgical. Each line drew a line Sam couldn't cross without consequence. Delaney watched, expression unreadable. It won't stop her. No, Ruthie agreed, but it'll make her careful. Careful is better than kind. That evening, Derek Holt, the Grangers' long-suffering family attorney, called. His voice carried that familiar dry amusement, the tone of a man who'd spent his career cleaning up genteel chaos. "Ms. Fox," he began, "I assume you've seen Mrs. Granger's post?" "I have." "Well," he said with a sigh, "she's created a bit of a mess. Technically, it violates her lease agreement's behavioral clause. Since she's now a month-to-month tenant, that puts her on thin ice." "Then let's add a new clause," Delaney said. "A clearer one." Derek chuckled softly. "You really are something." By morning, he'd sent her a draft titled Behavioral Conduct Addendum, a polite threat wrapped in legal language. It warned that public disparagement of property ownership or management could constitute cause for termination. Delaney reviewed it line by line, signed, and mailed it with a tracking number. Sam received it 2 days later. The next time Delaney saw her, Sam's smile was brittle. "You didn't have to escalate this," she said, standing stiff in the foyer. "It makes things awkward." Delaney tilted her head. "Awkwardness is temporary. Defamation is written." Sam's cheeks flushed crimson. "You think you've won something, don't you?" Delaney's voice was soft, almost kind. "No, I think I've earned peace. You're free to join me in it." Miles stood behind his wife, silent again, the man-shaped absence in every argument. "Tell her," Sam hissed, but he only murmured, "Just let it go, Sam." Delaney left before she could respond, stepping back into the warm afternoon, the air heavy with the scent of azalea blooms. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. A new text, this time from an unknown number. "Unknown. Miss Delaney? It's Avery. Mommy said I can't talk to you at school anymore, but I wanted to say thank you for the books. You're my safe grown-up." A photo followed. Avery's crayon drawing, the same one from months ago, now updated. A bigger house, with Delaney on one porch and Avery waving from the other. Delaney's hand trembled just once. She didn't cry right away. She read the message again, twice, before printing it too. One more artifact of truth for her records. When the paper emerged from the tray, she stared at the bright colors of Avery's handwriting and finally let the tears fall. Not angry ones, not even sad ones. Just quiet, human ones. She slipped the page into her binder, smoothing it flat with the palm of her hand. For all the signatures and clauses, all the formal notices and folder tabs, this was the only document that truly mattered. Then she closed the binder, wiped her cheeks, and exhaled. "Enough sentiment," she whispered. "Back to business." By nightfall, a notification blinked across Sam's social feed. Post removed for violation of community guidelines. Delaney smiled faintly, shutting off her phone. The quiet in her new house felt earned, sacred. But the final sound before she slept wasn't silence. It was the soft rustle of another printed page sliding into her growing collection. One more record. One more proof. The story wasn't over. It was documented. The letter arrived in a thick white envelope with the Grangers' return address typed neatly across the corner, the kind of envelope meant to look like reconciliation. Delaney found it in her mailbox just after sunrise, the paper cool with dew. She stood there in her robe and slippers, coffee cooling in her hand, while the world around her yawned awake, sprinklers ticking, delivery trucks humming, robins arguing in the hedges. Inside was a check, $30,000 over the purchase price. No note. No signature beyond Miles Granger's tight cursive at the bottom of a typed letter. We'd like to reclaim ownership of our family home. We're willing to make a generous offer for your understanding and discretion. Delaney read it once, then again. The silence that followed wasn't satisfaction, it was clarity. She folded the letter neatly back into its envelope, set it on the counter, and poured herself a second cup of coffee. By mid-morning, Ruthie was at her kitchen table, reading the check through narrowed eyes. They really think 30 grand buys them peace, she said, tapping the edge of the paper. It doesn't buy peace, Delaney replied. It buys silence. And I already bought that. Ruthie's eyes flicked up. Meaning? Delaney leaned back in her chair, her voice even. Meaning I'm keeping the peace, which is not the same as keeping quiet. Ruthie laughed, short and low. You do realize, Laney, they wouldn't have offered if they thought you'd say yes. Delaney smiled faintly. I know. That's what makes it a gift. She slid the check across the table and pulled a red pen from the drawer. With slow precision, she wrote a single word across its face. Void. The ink bled slightly, curling into the fibers of the paper like a wound sealing itself. Ruthie watched her. You're colder than I was at your age. I'm not cold, Delaney said softly. I'm cured. That afternoon, she saw Avery at the mailbox. The girl's hair was pulled into pigtails, her backpack covered in glittering stickers. She ran up, breathless, holding a pink envelope. Miss Delaney. Delaney knelt to meet her, the sun catching in the child's pale curls. Hey, sweetheart. I drew you something. Avery held out a folded piece of paper. Inside was a house. 2 houses this time, with a dotted line connecting them like a path. Beneath it, Avery had written, "So we can visit." Delaney's throat tightened. That's beautiful. Avery shifted from foot to foot. Mommy says you might move again. Delaney smiled gently. Does she? Uh-huh. She said you're done helping us now, but I don't want you to go. Will I still see you on weekends? Delaney hesitated, the question slicing through every practiced calm she'd built. If I'm still wanted, she said finally. Avery nodded, solemn. Then I want you. The bus honked twice from up the street. Avery waved and ran back down the walkway, her pink envelope flapping in the wind. Delaney stood there, the morning air brushing cold against her arms, the child's drawing trembling in her hands. That evening, she sealed the Granger's letter and the voided check in a new folder labeled Rejection, Formal Offers. The name amused her. It sounded almost corporate, like something that might outlive them all. She slipped the folder into the bottom drawer of her file cabinet and locked it. When the key clicked, a small smile ghosted across her lips. $30,000 had been the Grangers' attempt at rewriting a story that no longer belonged to them. But Delaney wasn't writing for money anymore. She was writing for order, for the satisfaction of a life finally symmetrical. By the end of March, the lease entered its final 30-day phase. Derek Holt sent both parties a neat summary. Month-to-month occupancy remains conditional pending renewal terms. Sam didn't reply. Miles signed the receipt and returned it without a word. From her porch, Delaney could see their lights flicker late into the night. Silhouettes pacing behind half-closed curtains. The same house that had once pulsed with dinner parties and curated laughter now looked dimmer, heavier. Sometimes Avery's face would appear in the upstairs window, small hand pressed to the glass. Delaney would wave, discreetly, the way neighbors do. Other times, she simply sat on her own porch with a cup of tea, the air rich with wisteria, the kind of scent that promised storms. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ruthie. Ruthie, April's around the corner. They'll come crawling before the first. Delaney typed back. Delaney, let them crawl. I'm not moving. She set her phone face down, the sky bleeding into twilight. Across the street, a porch light flicked on. The Grangers, late as usual. The wind stirred through the hedges, carrying a faint metallic tang, like the smell before a thunderstorm. Delaney drew in a long, even breath and whispered to the empty air, "Let's see what they offer next." Because money wasn't the currency anymore. Respect was. And that, she decided, wasn't for sale. The morning light cut through her kitchen blinds in pale stripes, glinting off the red pen lying on the counter. The same one she'd used to write void the night before. Delaney lifted the Granger's envelope again, the paper still stiff, the check heavy inside. No hesitation this time. She slid the check into a new envelope with a fresh sheet of letterhead. Brookside Holdings Group, Property Management Division. Her note was brief, measured, surgical. Mr. and Mrs. Granger enclosed. Please find the check you submitted for property purchase. As per current records, ownership of 618 Brook Hollow Lane is not for sale. Your tenancy remains month to month under existing terms. Please remit April rent as scheduled. Respectfully, Delaney Fox, managing owner. She paused for a moment before adding one more sheet. A crisp photocopy of her recorded deed. A reminder. Proof. The sound of the envelope sealing was quiet but decisive. At the post office, the clerk recognized her now. Ms. Fox from Brook Hollow Lane, always organized, always polite. Delaney handed over the envelope for certified mail, the red void mark faintly visible through the paper. Tracking and receipt? The clerk asked. Yes, Delaney said, smiling. I like records. When she left, the April wind tugged at her coat, and for the first time she didn't mind it. There was a strange freedom in formality, the kind that left no room for apology. That afternoon, Ruthie stopped by with 2 lattes and her laptop open to a draft listing. Here it is, she said, turning the screen toward Delaney. Public rental listing, 614 Brook Hollow Lane, available for occupancy upon lease expiration. Updated terms, market rate, professional management. Delaney took a sip of coffee, her tone dry. You're listing it? Just leverage, Ruthie said. People behave differently when they see their home online with a price tag. She scrolled further. I made sure the photos are generic. No family photos, no identifying features. Still, they'll recognize it. It'll make a point. Delaney's lips curved faintly. Good. They like points. By Thursday, Derek Holt called. I received the notarized copy, he said, his voice as calm as ever. Remove the Granger's renewal priority from the tenant record. Officially, they have no special standing. Thank you, Delaney said. He hesitated a moment, as though weighing the words. I've represented that family for 15 years. They've never been managed. Not like this. Delaney's tone was mild. They never thought they could be. The weekend came warm and bright, the air full of pollen and the hum of lawnmowers. Delaney spent Saturday repainting her porch rail a soft blue-gray, the same color as the morning sky. She replaced the loose floorboard, planted lavender in the front planter boxes, and hung a small sign by the door that read, The Fox House. Est 2025. When Avery came by on her bike that afternoon, she skidded to a stop at the curb. You fixed it up, she said, eyes wide. Delaney smiled, brushing her hands off on her jeans. Had some free time. Avery climbed the steps, peering at the new paint and the lavender. It smells nice. Can I draw a picture of us here? Of course. She sat cross-legged on the porch, crayons spilling from her backpack. 10 minutes later, she handed Delaney the paper, a bright crayon drawing of 2 figures, Delaney and Avery, sitting together on the porch. The house behind them glowing yellow. Above it, in Avery's uneven letters, This is ours. Delaney felt her chest tighten, soft and sharp at once. That's perfect, she said. Avery grinned. Mommy says we're not supposed to visit, but I told her I just came to deliver art. Artists don't follow rules. Delaney laughed quietly. Keep that energy forever. A car horn honked down the street, Sam's SUV idling with the window cracked. Avery jumped up, tucking her crayons into her bag. Bye, Miss Delaney? Delaney waved. See you soon, sweetheart. The SUV rolled forward, but not before Sam's eyes met hers through the windshield, a flicker of fury barely masked by a smile. That night, Delaney pinned the drawing to her fridge with a small wooden magnet shaped like a fox. The words, "This is ours," glowed softly under the kitchen light. When Sam came by later to drop off a misplaced folder, a forced, brittle gesture of civility, she saw it there. Her gaze lingered on the drawing, on the smiling figures, on the words. Something in her expression cracked. Cute, she muttered, her voice tight. Delaney only smiled. Avery's talented. Sam's jaw flexed. She opened the fridge to set down a bottle of wine and slammed the door harder than she needed to. The sound echoed through the kitchen, sharp and final. Delaney didn't flinch. She just looked at the refrigerator, at Avery's bright scrawl fluttering slightly from the force, and whispered to herself, "Let it rattle. It's still standing." Outside, a storm gathered on the horizon, slow-moving, electric. And for the first time, Delaney welcomed the thunder. The morning of Avery Granger's 7th birthday arrived wrapped in sunlight and Carolina breeze, the kind of perfect Saturday that made even the air feel celebratory. Delaney Fox was up before dawn, spreading gingham blankets across her backyard. The grass sparkled with dew, mason jars caught the first shimmer of light, and the smell of strawberry cupcakes cooled on her kitchen counter. No balloons, no rented bounce house, no event planner, just hand-lettered signs, lemonade in glass pitchers, and the quiet magic of a woman who'd built something steady out of chaos. By 10 o'clock, the yard was alive with children's laughter. Avery ran barefoot through the grass, a pink ribbon tied in her hair, trailing giggles and frosting. Her teacher from Creekside Elementary sat at the picnic table, balancing paper plates while chatting with Ruthie, who'd insisted on serving deviled eggs like it was a catered affair. Ruthie wiped her hands on a dish towel and nodded toward the birthday girl. "She's been glued to you all morning. That kid would orbit you if she could." Delaney smiled, tying another ribbon to the porch rail. "She deserves a good day." "You've given her a lot more than that," Ruthie said softly. "You're her constant, Lainey. They're temporary." Delaney didn't answer, not out of denial, but because truth had a way of cutting too cleanly when said aloud. By noon, the picnic was in full swing. Kids chased bubbles across the yard, their laughter spilling over the white fence. Avery's cake was lopsided, but perfect, vanilla with pink buttercream, topped with the words, "Best day ever." As the candles flickered, Avery clasped her hands and looked at Delaney, not her parents. "You have to help me make a wish," she whispered. Delaney bent closer, the smell of sugar and grass between them. "Go on, sweetheart." Avery leaned in, eyes squeezed tight. "I wish everything could stay just like this." The words hit Delaney harder than she expected. She smiled anyway. "That's a good one." The candles went out, and the kids cheered. Somewhere between slices of cake and lemonade refills, a camera clicked. One of the teachers, capturing the moment for the PTA newsletter. Delaney didn't think twice about it. She was too busy handing out napkins and hugging sticky faces goodbye. But by evening, the photos were online. A collage appeared on Facebook. Avery's backyard bash, tagged by the teacher. Dozens of smiling kids, the porch decked in soft colors, and at the center, Avery and Delaney with matching frosting smudges on their cheeks. It was innocent, warm, and a spark to dry tinder. Within an hour, Sam Granger saw it. Her comment appeared beneath the post, terse and sharp enough to slice the page in two. Overstepping? The word hung there, simple and poisonous. Delaney saw it just as Ruthie texted, Ruthie, ignore her. You built a life while she built optics. Delaney hesitated, scrolling past the photo of herself laughing with Avery, the kind of candid that looked more like family than any of Sam's holiday portraits ever had. She opened the comment box and typed her own response. Not to Sam, not to anyone in particular, but to the whole glossy, whispering neighborhood. Delaney Fox. Babysitter. Landlord. Friend. She hit post. Within minutes, hearts and quiet likes began to appear. Parents from the school, neighbors who'd quietly admired her composure, even Derek Holt, who never commented on anything, left a discreet thumbs up. An hour later, Miles Granger deleted his account entirely. That night, the yard was quiet again, only the faint hum of crickets and the glow of string lights swaying over the empty tables. Avery lingered long after the other kids had gone, her hands sticky with melted frosting. She looked up at Delaney, her expression serious in that small, wise way children sometimes have. Best party ever, she said, wrapping her arms around Delaney's waist. I didn't even miss Mommy being here. Delaney held her close, her breath catching. You'll always have people who love you, Avery, no matter what house you're in. But I like this house best, Avery whispered. Delaney smiled, smoothing the girl's hair. So do I. When Ruthie came to walk her back home, Avery looked up once more, waving as the porch light flickered on. See you tomorrow, Miss Delaney. Tomorrow, Delaney promised. She stood on her porch long after they'd gone, the faint buzz of her phone lighting up with new notifications. Strangers liking a photo of her holding Avery's birthday cake. But it wasn't attention she felt. It was exposure. For the first time, her quiet world wasn't hidden. Someone would come knocking soon, and she was ready to answer. The envelope slid under the Grangers' front door on a Thursday morning. Plain white. No letterhead this time. Just black ink in neat, deliberate print. Notice to vacate. 30 days. The spring air was already heavy with the smell of cut grass and rain when Delaney walked back down the driveway. The morning light caught on her car windows, sharp and cold, like glass before it shatters. Inside the house behind her, she imagined the sound of paper unfolding. The pause, the gasp, the first bloom of disbelief. She didn't have to imagine long. Her phone rang before she reached the corner. Miles Granger. She answered. Mr. Granger. There was no greeting, just breath, the sound of someone pacing. You can't be serious. 30 days? We have a child? School. Everything. This isn't... It's legal, she said evenly. And it's time. Delaney, listen. His voice cracked a little, not from anger this time, but from the hollow sound of a man realizing his leverage was gone. We've made mistakes, okay? Sam said things she shouldn't have, I know. But we can fix this. Delaney stopped at the corner of Brook Hollow Lane, looking down the familiar stretch of houses she'd once driven through like an employee, not an equal. You had 6 years to fix it, she said quietly. Now you have 30 days to leave it. He went silent. Then, finally, you're punishing us. No, she said, voice soft as silk. I'm closing a chapter. She ended the call before he could reply. That evening, Ruthie came over with Chinese takeout and 2 beers. You really did it, she said, unpacking the food onto Delaney's counter. I saw the timestamp on the filing myself. Delaney nodded. They'll call Derek next. Of course they will. Ruthie popped a fortune cookie and read aloud. Your timing is impeccable. She grinned. I swear, even the cookies are on your side. Delaney smiled faintly, leaning against the counter. 6 years of Sundays, 6 years of missed holidays. I think I've earned 30 days. Ruthie lifted her bottle in salute. You gave them 6 years, Lainey. Give them 30 days. They clinked the bottles together. The sound was small, but absolute. 2 days later, Delaney found Avery sitting on her own porch steps, knees pulled to her chest, clutching a stuffed bear. "Mommy and Daddy are fighting," Avery said quietly. "She said you're making us move." Delaney crouched beside her, the porch boards creaking under her weight. "That's between the grown-ups, sweetheart. You don't need to worry." Avery's lip quivered. "But will we still see each other?" Delaney brushed a tear from her cheek. "Always." The word landed with the weight of a promise she knew would outlive the lease. Avery sniffed. "You mean it?" Delaney smiled softly. "I mean it." From across the street, Sam's voice cut through the air, sharp, strained. "Avery, inside, now." The girl hesitated. Delaney gave her a gentle nudge. "Go on, baby, it's okay." Avery rose, walked halfway down the steps, then turned back and whispered, "You're still my home." Delaney's throat closed. She didn't trust her voice enough to answer. She watched until Avery disappeared behind the door that would soon no longer belong to her parents. That night, the paperwork became official. Derek Holt filed the change of lock authorization electronically, confirming the date, May 1st, 9x a.m. Delaney received the email while sitting on her porch, the laptop balanced on her knees. Rain had started to fall. Soft, steady, cleansing. She scrolled through the forms, double-checked the timestamp, and pressed confirm. The legal finality felt colder than she expected. Cleaner, too. Her phone buzzed again. Derek this time, text only. "Derek." Filed and stamped. "They can stay through April, but after that, doors change." Delaney. "Thank you." He replied a minute later. "Derek." "I've seen a lot of endings. This one's almost poetic." Delaney typed back. "Almost." Then closed her laptop. She leaned back in her chair, the smell of rain thickening as the storm gathered over Greenville. The wind pressed against the windows of both houses now, hers and the Grangers, like something trying to get in or out. She thought of Avery's drawing on her fridge, the 2 figures on the porch beneath the words, "This is ours." Maybe it was, in a way. Maybe it always would be. Lightning flickered in the distance, the kind that came with the kind of storms that clean the air and shift everything that follows. Delaney stood, the rain catching her hair, and whispered into the night. "They never changed the locks. I just did." The moving truck arrived at dawn, its diesel engine humming low and reluctant, as if even the machine knew what it was taking part in. Brook Hollow Lane was still wet from last night's storm, the pavement slick with reflections of magnolia leaves and mailbox flags. Delaney stood on her porch, coffee in hand, watching through the early mist as uniformed movers in gray shirts carried out the Granger's life, box by box. Clothes, dishes, portraits that never included her. She didn't look away. Sam Granger emerged first, sunglasses on, though there was no sun yet. Her hair was immaculate, lipstick perfect, armor intact. She crossed the lawn briskly, directing the movers with clipped commands that betrayed her trembling. Delaney set her mug down on the porch rail. "Morning," she said. Sam froze mid-step, startled. Then, after a pause, "Morning." Her voice had the flat politeness of someone reading from a script. Delaney didn't move closer, didn't soften. "You'll find the new forwarding address forms on the counter. I left a set of change of service sheets, too." Sam's mouth twitched, half anger, half shame. "Of course you did." The air between them held years of unsaid things. Every condescending smile, every whispered dismissal, every Christmas where Delaney had served instead of sat. "I appreciate the notice," Sam said stiffly. "We'll be gone by the deadline." Delaney nodded once. "That's all I asked." Sam hesitated like she might say more, might even apologize. But the movers called from inside, and the moment collapsed. She turned away. An hour later, Miles appeared, carrying a box-marked office. His face was drawn, older somehow. His crisp composure melted into something that almost looked like humility. He stopped at the edge of the driveway. "Ms. Fox." "Mr. Granger." He nodded once. No words followed. None were needed. The silence was cleaner than any explanation he could offer. He placed the box on the truck and walked back toward the house, shoulders slightly hunched, the posture of a man finally realizing the walls had never been his. By late morning, the house stood half empty, its windows bare and echoing. Ruthie arrived in her gray blazer and sunglasses, carrying a clipboard and the unshakable calm of a woman who'd seen 100 transitions just like this, only never one this personal. She joined Delaney at the edge of the property. Together they walked the boundary line, lawn to driveway, driveway to curb. Ruthie checked items off her list. Power meter verified, exterior fixtures secure, mailbox replaced. "You did it," Ruthie said finally, sliding her pen behind her ear. "All legal, all tidy." "They're gone in hours." Delaney turned the keyring in her hand. The same house key she'd once used for midnight babysitting shifts, now cool and heavy with a new kind of meaning. "I didn't want it messy," she said. "It's not," Ruthie replied. "It's poetic." They stopped by the fence just as the SUV pulled forward. Avery's small face appeared in the backseat window, framed by sunlight and streaked with tears. "Miss Delaney," she called, her voice muffled through the glass. Delaney lifted her hand in a steady wave. "Hey, sweetheart." Avery pressed her palm to the window. "Love you." Delaney swallowed hard. "Me too." The car idled for a beat, then rolled down the street. Sam didn't look back. Miles kept his eyes straight ahead. Only Avery turned in her seat, waving until the curve of the road took her out of sight. When the truck was gone and the street fell quiet again, Delaney and Ruthie stood at the edge of the lawn. Ruthie exhaled. "It's done." Delaney stared at the empty driveway. "They'll call it running. I'll call it release." Ruthie's phone buzzed, and she glanced down. "You'll want to see this," she said, handing it over. On the screen, Sam's latest social post glared under filtered light. A selfie in the car, sunglasses on, captioned, "Starting fresh." Some people forget grace, but we don't forget class. No comments, no hearts, not a single like. Delaney handed the phone back without expression. "Silence looks good on her." Ruthie smiled, tucking the phone away. "You going inside?" "In a bit," Delaney said, her voice low. "I want to feel the air like this. Right after something ends, but before anyone notices it's over." She turned the house key once in her hand and slipped it into her pocket. The breeze shifted, carrying the faint smell of lavender from her porch planters. Across the yard, the Grangers' empty home glimmered in the soft Carolina sun, hollow, quiet, hers. For the first time in 6 years, Delaney didn't hear anyone calling her name, and she liked the sound of it. The morning sun poured across Brook Hollow Lane, soft and unhurried. The kind of light that didn't demand anything from anyone. Delaney Fox sat on her porch, coffee mug balanced on her knee, the world finally quiet. No phone buzzing, no schedules to track, no footsteps echoing from upstairs demanding breakfast or permission or presence. The neighborhood, so long orchestrated by her invisible labor, moved without her now. Mailmen, joggers, sprinklers, all of them existing in the rhythm she'd once been expected to keep for someone else. Her house, her home, smelled faintly of lemon oil and lavender. The air inside hummed with peace. Through the front window, the living room glowed in morning gold. The walls bore photos that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Not of the Grangers, not of curated perfection, but of her and Avery. The two of them grinning with cake frosting on their cheeks. Avery's drawing from that day now framed in simple oak, hung by the door where it caught the light every time the sun moved west. Across the hall, the file cabinet that had once been her war chest now stood neatly closed. The drawer labeled Lisa's was empty, save for a single sheet of paper tucked at the back. Status: closed. She ran her finger over the label and smiled. Ruthie arrived just before 10, as she often did on Fridays, carrying 2 lattes and a folder under her arm. "You've gone domestic," she teased, taking in the tidy porch, the row of blooming lavender, the soft hum of a life restored. Delaney chuckled. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Ruthie settled into the chair beside her, passing over a coffee. "Not bad. Just deserved." For a while they sat in silence, the only sound the steady chirp of finches in the magnolia tree. Then Ruthie said quietly, "You built this with quiet power, Lainey. Most people only dream of that kind of control, the kind that doesn't shout." Delaney's gaze lingered on the horizon, on the house across the street that now stood empty and still. "Quiet power is the kind that lasts." Ruthie smiled, slow and knowing. "You should put that on a mug." "Maybe I will." Later that afternoon, Derek Holt stopped by. He'd traded his usual suit for rolled-up sleeves and sunglasses, the posture of a man trying to forget he was an attorney for a day. He handed her an envelope. Final notice of lease termination, officially recorded, stamped and sealed. "It's over," he said simply. Delaney accepted it without ceremony, sliding it onto the table beside her coffee. "You didn't just win," Derek added. "You outgrew them the moment they stopped seeing you." Delaney looked up, and for a fleeting second there was something in her eyes that wasn't triumph. It was peace, yes, but layered with the faint ache of knowing what it cost to earn it. "I didn't need them to see me," she said softly. "I just needed them to look up for once." Derek gave a small nod, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You've changed, Ms. Fox." "I've arrived," she corrected. He tipped his head in approval, then left her to the quiet. As the day melted toward evening, Delaney wandered the house barefoot, trailing her fingers across the framed moments lining the hallway. Snapshots of laughter, paint smudges, Avery's letters in bright crayon colors. In the kitchen, the calendar still showed May, but she hadn't changed it. Time, for the first time, felt hers to keep or ignore. Outside, the air turned honey-thick with dusk. Porch lights flickered on up and down the block. The Grangers' old house sat dark, the for sale sign tilting slightly in the breeze. Delaney poured herself another cup of coffee. Decaf this time, the ritual more comfort than caffeine. She stepped out onto her porch, the boards cool beneath her feet, and watched the sky shift into violet. Somewhere, a wind chime sang softly. She thought of Avery, of the promise she'd made to always be there in some way. And she knew she would be. Not as the help, not as the shadow, but as the quiet constant the child would someday understand. The mug warmed her hands as she leaned back in the chair, a small satisfied smile ghosting her lips. Behind her, Avery's framed drawing glowed in the last light of day. The porch, 2 figures, the words, "This is ours." Delaney turned her gaze toward the horizon, her voice barely above a whisper, steady as the heartbeat of the life she'd rebuilt. "They said at Christmas, stay quiet. You're just the babysitter." So I took my paycheck and the house keys.